They had to capture a strategically located fort leading into the French town of Cherbourg. His unit was pinned down by heavy machine gun fire, but John D. Kelly didn't even hesitate. Grabbing some Bangalore torpedoes, he rushed forward in full view of the enemy and planted his explosives, forcing the Germans out of their position, and this helped in the taking of the fort. Hello, my name is Louis Marsh. I'm senior pastor of River Church here in Parker, Arizona. Welcome to The Ultimate Sacrifice, where I tell true stories of American heroism each and every week right here on the channel. I'm glad you're here. I hope you'll stick with us, and I hope that you will like this. Give me the thumbs up if you like it, and subscribe if you haven't. We're a new channel, and we need all the help we can get. Kelly joined the Army from Cambridge Springs, Pennsylvania in June of 1942, and by June 25, 1944, he was serving as a corporal in Company E of the 314th Infantry Regiment, which was part of the 79th Infantry Division. Now, the 79th had missed D-Day, having arrived in England only 2 months earlier, but it had a key role to play in the drive to secure the capstone of the Cotentin Peninsula. After landing at Omaha Beach on June 14th, that's 8 days after D-Day, the 79th drove west and turned north into Cherbourg in company with the 4th and 9th Infantry Divisions. Among the men in the 314th Regiment of the 79th, as we said, was former logger from northwestern Pennsylvania, Corporal John D. Kelly of Company E. The 23-year-old's courage was to play a critical role in sealing off a port that the Allies considered absolutely crucial to their invasion strategy, the port of Cherbourg. As the Americans closed in on Cherbourg, the 314th was handed an unenviable assignment: take Fort du Roux. The strongpoint was built on a cliff south of the city, and the fort was considered impregnable by its German defenders. Efforts to dislodge the Germans began on June 24th, but the 3rd Battalion of the 314th couldn't make any headway, taking what was described as, quote, prohibitive casualties, unquote, from the defenses. So they regrouped that evening. The regiment laid the groundwork for another attempt beginning at 8 a.m. on the 25th, with a bombardment of the entire area. 2nd Battalion finally had a breakthrough around mid-morning, overcoming a fortified position a few hundred yards east of Fort du Roux. At 10 o'clock, Corporal Kelly and the men of Easy Company joined Fox Company in attacking from the east and south, attempting to neutralize the pillboxes that were defending the fort one at a time. The official history describes the coordinated approach required for the job, with a group of men using Bangalore torpedoes to blow through the wire. Now, if you don't know what a Bangalore torpedo is, stay tuned for footnotes where we'll lay it out for you. And after they did that, they followed up with charges fastened to the poles and inserting them into firing apertures, while others laid down covering fire on the pillboxes themselves. One bunker in particular was giving the 2nd Battalion fits, and Corporal Kelly volunteered to make another run at it. He picked up a 10-foot pole capped by 15 pounds of TNT, climbed the slope under withering blast of machine gun fire, and placed the charge at the strongpoint's base. The resulting explosion, well, it made no impact, so Kelly set off for another attempt. This time, the charge blew the ends off the German machine guns, but the job wasn't done yet. So he retrieved a 3rd pole charge and successfully breached the rear entrance of the strongpoint. Then he polished it off with a few grenades. That was all the persuasion that the groggy defenders needed at that point, as the official history says. An officer who was there and observed Kelly's actions that day later described them to war correspondent Henry T. Gorel of the United Press. Quote, we were pinned down by machine guns, with dead and wounded all around us. When I saw this guy carrying a long pole, it was Kelly, with the pole charges, long sticks with a charge of dynamite on the end. He dropped 3 or 4 of them down a hole where the periscope sticks out of the pillbox and smoked the Heinies out. He did this all under enemy fire, unquote. Though the first white flag was sighted within Fort du Roux at 11:30 a.m., the Americans didn't secure the sprawling complex until nearly 10 p.m. that night. But when they had, they could look down on a panoramic view of the port they had come to liberate, and would help to do exactly that by the end of the day on June 27th. On October 8th, the regiment found itself near Forêt-de-Péroy in northeastern France, with an attack scheduled for the following day. The commanding officer of the 79th Division, Major General Ira T. Weish, paid a visit to the 2nd Battalion command post. In a brief ceremony, he awarded John D. Kelly the Distinguished Service Cross for his actions at Fort de Rue. Kelly, who had avoided injury in the attack on the fort, had been slightly wounded on July 5th, but was back in action 2 weeks later, and remained with his unit as it slogged ahead. With winter approaching, the 314th was among the units working its way through the treacherous Vosges Mountains. On the way to Hagenau, a village barely 10 miles from the Rhine, the regiment crossed through the Saverne Gap on November 22nd, but the recently promoted Technical Sergeant John D. Kelly would go no further, and he died on November 23rd. Kelly's wife, Mary, got the news back home in Grove City, Pennsylvania. Kelly was the oldest of 5 children with 2 brothers and 2 sisters. His parents, Daniel and Elizabeth, lived in Cambridge Springs. On July 24th, 1945, the War Department announced the Distinguished Service Cross awarded to Kelly for his actions at Fort de Rue had been upgraded to the Medal of Honor. Here's how the citation reads, quote, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life, above and beyond the call of duty, on June 25th, 1944, in the vicinity of Fort de Rue, Cherbourg, France, when Corporal Kelly's unit was pinned down by heavy enemy machine gun fire emanating from deep within the entrenched strongpoint on the slope leading up to the fort, Corporal Kelly volunteered to attempt to neutralize the strongpoint. Arming himself with a pole charge about 10 feet long with 15 pounds of explosives affixed, he climbed the slope under a withering blast of machine gun fire and placed the charge at the strongpoint's base. The subsequent blast was ineffective, and again, alone and unhesitatingly, he braved the slope to repeat the operation. This second blast blew off the ends of the enemy guns. Corporal Kelly then climbed up the slope a 3rd time to place a pole charge at the strongpoint's rear entrance. When this had been blown open, he hurled hand grenades inside the positions, forcing the survivors of the enemy gun crews to come out and surrender. The gallantry and tenacity of purpose and the utter disregard for his personal safety displayed by Corporal Kelly were an incentive to his comrades and worthy of emulation by all, unquote. On February 9th, Kelly's widow, parents, and youngest sister, Geraldine, traveled to the Logan Armory on the University of Pittsburgh's campus. There, Colonel Lucius McKay, Crumere, presented Mary Kelly with the nation's highest honor for military valor, the Medal of Honor. Proud as they were, the Kellys were no different than any other Gold Star family. They would carry John's death with them for decades to come. In a 1994 interview, John Kelly's sister, Catherine Schilling, told the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that their mother, quote, never did believe he was dead. To the day she died, she never did believe it, which was hard on her, unquote. Technical Sergeant John D. Kelly remains in France at the Epinal American Cemetery, not far from where he spent the final weeks of his life. And now, stay tuned for some footnotes. Hello and welcome to Footnotes. Glad you're here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a couple of things. One is, you probably noticed we didn't have very many pictures of John Kelly. That's because I could only find 2 that I was sure was him. So, back in those days, a lot of people didn't get a lot of pictures taken of them. And of course, because he died so young, well, he never had a chance in later life. And so I'm sorry that there weren't more photographs of this brave young man, but that's the way it is sometimes. And of course, the further back in history you go, the more that's going to become a problem. Now, what about these Bangalore torpedo things? Well, I learned something new getting ready for this podcast, and I wanted to share that with you. I've heard about Bangalore torpedoes for a long time. May sound odd, but, my father, as I've mentioned many times before, was a World War II vet, and the Marines used these things in the Pacific a lot, as did the Army in the Pacific as well as in the Atlantic. They were really used well for blowing up barbed wire, concertina wire. You could set off minefields, or just not the whole field, but just that narrow strip where the torpedo was. And what they were, and you'll be seeing some graphics I'm going to throw up here on the screen as well, were just poles with dynamite in them, and then you would screw them together and push them as far as you needed to go, or it was with as many torpedoes as you had, and then you would detonate them electrically. I almost said electronically, but this is 1944. There's not a whole lot of electronics in the war yet. So here's the background. This is what I learned. In the early 1910s, the British studied material capable of breaking through a network of barbed wire. This, of course, was going to become a huge problem in the First World War. If the sappers were equipped with shears, such a procedure is slow and it endangers the life of the engineers and the soldiers, since obviously the obstacle is probably going to be being fired at by the enemy. Military engineers had this idea of using the firepower of an explosive more efficiently than a hand grenade, and something that would be easy to transport by the infantry. Well, in 1912, Captain McClintock of the British Army of Bengal in Bangalore, India, to be precise. That's where the name came from, and I didn't know any of this. Developed the device. He imagined a metal cylindrical tube several meters long, which would fit into another tube in order to increase the area of the explosion. Filled with explosives, these cylinders are introduced through the network of barbed wire. Explosion. The metal casing break down into multiple fragments that destroy the wires and open a way about 3 meters wide. The U.S. military reused this procedure in the early 1940s and produced large-scale torpedo M1A1, known, of course, as the Bangalore, from the name of the city where it was originally designed. This torpedo consisted of several cylinders connected to each other, or you could connect them to each other, 1.5 meters long and 5 centimeters in diameter, each consisting of 3.85 kilograms of TNT. Used on June 6, 1944, by the engineers units on the beaches and near the German defensive installations in order to create breaches in the numerous barbed wire network set up by the Germans, the Bangalore was immortalized in 2 films. The Longest Day. Now, in The Longest Day, they have this scene where he gets some engineers together and you see them pushing these poles through the sand and up under the barbed wire, and they screw them together. That's the Bangalore torpedo. And also in Saving Private Ryan. Today, amazingly enough, the Bangalore torpedo is still being used in a modified version by many armies throughout the world. I don't know if the U.S. Army or Marine Corps still uses them. I imagine now they're probably a lot more electronic and probably have higher value explosives than TNT. But either way, this thing is well over 100 years old and it's still being used. That's pretty amazing. So that's the story, the true story of the Bangalore torpedo. Thank you so much for watching. If you're still with me, man, thumbs up to you. I hope you'll give me a thumbs up, and I hope you'll subscribe. We really need subscribers to this channel so that we can keep pushing on here. So help us out. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up, tell your friends about it, and leave a comment below if you'd like to. Either you can make a comment, you can ask questions, you can do whatever you want. Say whatever you'd like. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is Louis Marsh, Senior Pastor of River Church in Parker, Arizona, saying thanks for watching. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.